Welcome back to channel and Facebook page. The Young and the Restless unfolds another storm, one stitched not in boardrooms alone, but in the fragile chambers of the human heart. Billy Abbott has always been the kind of man who runs toward fire, convinced that if he throws himself at the blaze hard enough, he can bend it into submission. Sally Spectra, on the other hand, has built her life on edges, balancing without looking down. Their volatile chemistry worked, until it didn't. Until Sally drew a line in the sand and asked Billy to choose. It wasn't just romance anymore. It was survival. Billy's obsession with Chancellor had grown into more than a business campaign. It was a proxy war, fought for legacy, for pride, and for the lingering wound named Jill, a wound he swore had healed but still bled with every move. Every late-night strategy session, every reckless public jab, every boardroom gamble. It wasn't about the company. It was about settling ghosts. And Sally knew what grief could do. She had danced with fury herself, and she recognized the way it eats people alive when it transforms into purpose. Each time Jill's name hovered unspoken between them, Sally read the truth in Billy's face. This wasn't strategy. It was penance set on fire. So Sally spoke plainly, perhaps too plainly. Because sometimes gentle words only fog the glass and delay the crash. If he wanted a life with her, he had to stop feeding the grudge. He had to stop using Chancellor as a weapon against the past. Billy heard her. And yet he didn't. In his restless mind, love and war could coexist if he juggled hard enough. To him, Sally wasn't asking for surrender. She was asking for balance. A man could honor Jill's memory and still build a future with the woman he loved. Couldn't he? But the subtext of Sally's ultimatum, Chancellor or us, landed with the weight of a verdict. Billy froze, staring into the battlefield only he could see, bargaining with himself. He thought about Jill, larger than life, always casting a shadow. He thought about the promises whispered in the dark to prove everyone wrong. And he thought about Sally, the rare woman who called him out without making him feel small. And in that hesitation, Sally read the truth. She saw the calculus behind his eyes, and she understood with dreadful clarity that Billy wasn't ready to walk away. Not for her. Not yet. The conversation swerved into something messy, tempers rising, words sharpening, the floor tilting beneath them like a ship taking water. Sally's breath hitched, not just from anger, but from fear that she was about to lose him to a revenge play that would eventually swallow them both. She reached for the door. For air. For space. Anything to stop the spiral. Billy reached too, instinctively, desperate to keep the center from splitting apart. Their hands collided in the wrong rhythm. Elbows caught. A graceless human collision. Sally stumbled against the edge of a table. Pain shot up her ribs, a white-hot jolt that made the room flash. She swore she was fine, even as her vision blurred. Billy's face drained of color, apologies tumbling over each other, but adrenaline doesn't negotiate. Within minutes, a medic was at her side, guiding her to breathe, to count, while Billy hovered with that special kind of terror reserved for watching the consequences of your own chaos. At the clinic, the antiseptic quiet made truths sound louder. Sally spoke with precision. This wasn't an accident. Not really. This was the cost of Billy's campaign. A war against shadows that created a weather system where injuries were inevitable. I'm the collateral, she whispered to the ceiling. She recited the litany she'd been storing, the canceled dinners, the evasive texts, the way every accomplishment of theirs was treated like a distraction from a more important battle. She even tried to justify him to herself, reminding her heart that grief turns good people into tyrants. But the verdict was clear: she would not be a supporting character in Jill's saga. Understanding why Billy hurt did not obligate her to live inside that hurt. When Billy came to see her later, his eyes were raw with remorse and stubbornness. He led with apology, then veered into justification. He promised to throttle back, then slipped into just one more move. Sally listened because she always had. But patience, she realized, had become another word for permission. She told him she would never diminish Jill's importance. But she also told him, anger cannot be the architect of their life together. Then came the question, sharp and unsoftened, choose. Not because she delighted in forcing his hand, but because his refusal to choose was already a choice. Billy froze. And in that stillness, Sally felt a finality that tasted like iron. She saw him gazing past her shoulder, toward a battlefield only he could see. She saw the boy who believed he could bend the universe into fairness if he just fought hard enough. And she saw the man who loved her, yet couldn't let go of vengeance. He left with the 1,000-yard stare of a man bargaining with himself. And in the silence that followed, Sally began to accept the brutal truth. When a man hesitates about you, he's already answered. But love has a way of boomeranging. Billy returned. Not with theater, but with raw honesty. He didn't disguise his hesitation. He named it fear. Then he did what fear hates most. He spoke the plain truth. Sally was not an accessory to his life. She was the point of it. And for once, Sally allowed herself to believe it. She had loved him through the storms, enough to demand a version of him that could finally stand still without reaching for the next fire. He chose her. Simple words. Complicated implications. Choosing Sally meant not just stepping away from a corporate war, but untangling his addiction to conflict. Jack Abbott, weary from years of watching Billy's combustions, observed with cautious affection. He didn't doubt Billy's heart, but he doubted its attention span. Sincerity, Jack feared, would melt into gestures, then fade into restlessness. He hoped, quietly, skeptically, that this time would be different. That the shock of seeing Sally in a clinic gown, combined with Jill's lingering absence, would plant a lesson Billy wouldn't forget by Monday. But Jack knew, hope is not a plan. The next days became a sobriety test for Billy's soul. He canceled unnecessary meetings. He called partners to reset expectations. He began the unglamorous work of replacing adrenaline with intention. He even wrote down promises. No more midnight raids on his peace, no more weaponizing boardrooms to exorcise ghosts. Sally didn't demand penance. She asked for practice. Visibility. A voice in his choices. She invited him into the mundanity that makes long love possible. Dinners kept, calls returned, silences shared. None of this erased the ultimatum day. But it turned it into a pivot. Sally still carried a bruise. Billy still itched at provocations. Yet the fight had shifted, from spectacle to stewardship. Their new refrain. Love is not a reward for winning wars. It's the reason to stop starting them. Jack's worry softened only when he saw Billy choose boring over brilliant, over and over, proving that change isn't in grand declarations but in quiet, practiced hours. For once, their story wasn't a cliff dive. It was a build. Billy chose Sally. Sally chose him. Not because it was easy, but because choosing the same thing long enough can turn absence into design, not loss. Lauren, Michael and Kane arc. But Genoa City never stays quiet for long. While Billy and Sally tried to steady their hearth, elsewhere another storm gathered. Lauren Baldwin received whispers. Her husband Michael had positioned himself as a broker between Kane and a network of targets. At first it seemed neutral, competent. But beneath the headline was a darker truth. It was sabotage cloaked as strategy. To the world, Michael appeared to have swapped one perilous job for another. To Lauren, it felt like déjà vu. Her husband, convinced he alone could manage competing truths, outwit men who defined themselves by the games they played. Kane Ashby, adaptive and ambitious, was no small threat. In him, Lauren recognized a younger Victor Newman, a man who cloaked appetite for control as destiny. Michael dismissed the comparison, but Lauren's worry refused to vanish. She had lived too long in the orbit of men who treated people as chessboards. Michael's plan was dangerous. Engineer information flows, sabotage from within, all while whispering intel to Victor, without ever admitting it outright. Silence wasn't omission. It was structure. But silence in marriage is a crack that deepens. Lauren set her terms, transparency as a condition for proximity. No more maps she couldn't read. Michael reassured her, he wasn't working for Victor. Not formally. Not on payroll. But she knew better. In practice, he was feeding Victor exactly what he needed. Meanwhile, Cain advanced his takeover of Jabot, measured, patient, relentless. But Victor's shadow loomed. He walked into Cain's world like a verdict, not a guest. Calm, cold, clear. The attack continues tomorrow. With or without Cain's enthusiastic consent. To Victor, Cain was either an instrument or a sacrifice. Either way, the lesson would be taught. Back at home, Lauren and Michael lived the small hours where strategies collided with rituals, half-finished wine, quiet ultimatums. Lauren resigned from her role as the woman reassured last. Michael listened, mapping the next 48 hours in his head, telling himself the old lie, that this time, calibration would be flawless. But no one negotiates with Victor without paying in unexpected currency. At Jabot, whispers multiplied. Contracts reviewed. Votes delayed. Lenders backing away. Each move explainable in isolation. Together, a constrictor tightening. Cain began to suspect sabotage. And he wasn't wrong. Michael's calendar told the truth. Precisely timed leaks, all keeping Victor 2 steps ahead. Lauren stopped interrogating. She replaced questions with boundaries. Michael stopped chasing brilliance and leaned into discipline, accidentally becoming a better husband in the process. But Genoa City braced for impact. Victor didn't want headlines. He wanted compliance. And by dusk, everyone understood, tomorrow's war had already begun today. The city settled into the electric quiet before another round. Marriages survive secrets, or they don't. Men learn from monsters, or become them. Empires withstand pressure, or crumble. Tonight, every player believes he can still choose which sentence will be true in the morning. Tomorrow, Genoa City will prove them right, or remind them how often belief and outcome part ways in the hands of those who mistake leverage for immunity.